Well, as Dr. Silva said, I'm Jennifer Bailey. I'm with Spirit AeroSystems. And before we get started, I really feel like I have to do a little level setting. There will actually be no Tai Chi performed during any point in my class. So if you're disappointed, I'm very sorry, but what I am going to do is tell you a little bit about Spirit AeroSystems. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Spirit AeroSystems, we were founded 10 years ago out of the divestiture of Boeing Aerosystems. And at that time, we only had 3 principal sites in the United States, all in the Midwest. Over the last 10 years, we've had amazing growth, and we're now a global company with sites in Europe and in Asia. During that time, we've nearly doubled our revenue, and we can now be found on a broad range of commercial aircraft, including all Boeing aircraft, all the major Airbus platforms, several regional jets, as well as several helicopters. During this time, we've also had 147% growth in our backlog. And all of this growth has been very amazing, but not without challenge. And today, my director, Dr. Wendy Crossman, is going to talk to you about some of our journeys that we have found process efficiency through standardization.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. I'll have to admit I'm a little nervous. It's been a while since I've done this, and I was telling Ted that I'm also getting too old to memorize things, so please bear with me. I'm excited to come and talk to you about this. Communicating is one of the most important things that we do, and you cannot over-communicate, I don't think, but we'll see how that goes. So before we get started, the academic in me wants to perform a little survey, so I see that I have a good sample size here. So if you bear with me, all I want you to do, it's not hard, is raise your hand if the answer to my question is yes. If the answer to my question is no, just keep your hand down. It's very simple. So raise your hand if you've been a student at some time in your lifetime. Has anybody in here been a student? Should be everybody, right? So raise your hand if you recognize this standard scoring for students. Everybody seen this before? Yes. So when you enter a class like Dr. De Silva's class, the first thing that you're thinking about is, what do I got to do to get an A? That's what I'm thinking, right? And so I expect Dr. De Silva to show me what I got to do to get an A. It's very important that people understand what's expected out of them, okay? How many of you have been in a class before and no one told you what you had to do to get an A? Yeah, it's very confusing, right? For me, not knowing what to expect, what's expected from me causes anxiety, and it causes me not to want to perform. I don't really want to be in that class. So the same expectation goes to our employees and to suppliers. They all want to know what it takes to perform. What do we expect out of them? So how many of you recognize this? Anybody ever seen this before? Somebody changed the standards on you, right? You get in this class and you go, oh no, I have to do even better than I did before to get an A. So I'm always thinking, I'm just going to be average in this class, even though the standard changed. One more survey question, and then I'll start on my presentation. Raise your hand if this has ever happened to you. You're at work, and you think you're doing an A+ job. You really think you're killing it. And then the end of the year performance comes around, and you find out something different. You're waiting till the end of the year to find out that you're not doing such a great job. Has anybody ever had that happen to them? No? None of you guys? You guys must have had some great bosses. Yeah, because I've had some bosses. Yeah, I've had bosses that have not showed me what I need to do to be successful. And you know, it's very frustrating for employees if they don't understand what it is it takes to be successful and how they make corporations successful. So you're probably wondering where I'm going with all of this. As a global organization, it is important to develop, implement, and communicate a set of standards to be utilized by all of our Spirit locations. And the topic of my conversation tonight is process efficiency through standardization. And you're probably wondering why I would talk about this at the World Trade Council. As a global community, supply chain professionals and suppliers seek to understand what is the standard, what is expected, what do I need to do to be successful. Process standardization can lend some direction to that question. Employees are seeking feedback on how they perform. Doesn't matter if those employees are US-based, UK-based, or Asian-based. Everybody wants to understand how they perform and how it supports the corporation, much like you want to know how you're being scored when you're in class, right? Same thing. So our learning objectives for this evening are aligning people and processes to establish common standards, the supply chain metrics organization, how that all works, development of common metrics at global sites, supplier realization, and global supply chain support as a key partner in new business development. Maybe if I can turn my page. Business leaders are becoming more aware of the competitive potential that supply chain management can bring to their corporations. As many of you are aware, supply chains are defined in many different ways. The universal definition for supply chain is a network of organizations from upstream, supplier end of the supply chain, through downstream, customer end of the supply chain, with integrated processes that produce value in form of products and services. The shift in considering supply chain as strategic and away from tactical is due to various changes in the way business is conducted in a global environment. Corporations' manufacturing spend is becoming larger as supply chain as more and more corporations offload and offshore work into the global business space. According to Mazak and Peterson, approximately 65 to 85% of companies' manufacturing spend has been outsourced, adding to the growth of supply chain's total material allocation. It's pretty big. A lot of supply chains are 65 to 70% of their corporation spend. It's a lot to manage, and it's global. With continued cost pressures and more complicated global supply chains, global competition and heightened customer value expectations and growing stakeholder demands, business strategy is increasingly become aligned to supply chain strategy. Supply chain organizations are increasingly relied on to support negotiations to improve and align suppliers' process capabilities to business demands. Best performing companies identify their supply chain as key strategic differential. There's 5 steps to competitiveness. Supply chain executives need not only understand their role within the larger business strategy, they need to have a view of where they might most effectively apply resources in order to close gaps in affordability. Supply chain executives are closing those gaps to drive competitiveness into the corporation. There are 5 important steps to implement to drive competitiveness and support business strategy. These steps include engagement of corporate executives and business unit leaders. You have to have your executive team on board with the strategies that you're developing. You have to have a vision, a mission, and a plan. Commodity and supplier strategy processes, strategic cost management, and procurement and supply organization structure and governance. For global organization, these steps are required to be implemented consistently. Without consistency, the corporation could lose leverage of volume spend loss in the development of partnerships, suboptimal organizational, and loss of knowledgeable staff. The key that is essential that from the CEO level down, there is a recognition and priority given to supply chain manager as a strategic goal. Considering the strategies valued as most essential, where do the greatest application of opportunities give an impression to exist? So if you take a look at my chart here, and Jim let me have a pointer, which is somewhat dangerous, you notice that strategic importance and strategic implementation, one of the highest things to pay attention to is human resource development. Human resource development is plotted highest because aligning supply chain professionals to standards for quality, delivery, and cost is imperative to strategic execution. The development of strategy alone will not support business initiatives. The implementation of standards and strategies across all facets of supply chain organization is a vital step in the evolution of any supply chain. The transformation process of any supply chain organization needs to be carefully orchestrated. Supply chain executives need to have a targeted set of plans around each step in their transformation. Supply chain professionals need to be included in the process to understand the underlying strategy and their roles in that strategy. We're going to also talk about strategic cost management, category strategies, total cost of ownership, supply-based strategy, measurement and evaluation, and supplier assessment and management, and world-class quality. Again, it's important to remember what we talked about before is understanding standards, understanding where your employees are on those standards, and also your suppliers. Because if you send mixed messages to either one of those team members, you will not be successful. So strategic cost management, it is basically how it sounds. It's the development of a global organization to develop tools to analyze cost elements in the manufacturing of a product. The decomposition of fully landed and burdened material cost. These cost elements can include but not be limited to material costs, logistics cost, processing cost, part processing, equipment utilization, lean practices, capital requirements, profit, G&A, handling charges, and global wrap rates. Things that my team deals with every day and we battle with every day. This cost management makes recommendations and supports sourcing a product in the right place at the right time. Category strategies. Development of common elements in products and services bought by the corporation. You want to bundle like things together for leverage. Pairing like items to support cost management and global leverage to support strategic partners in the supply base. Each commodity strategy may differ due to many market trends. These trends include a number of suppliers in the commodity, the complexity of the product, the amount of interaction with the end customers for approvals, and location considerations, to name a few. Total cost of ownership. Only understanding the cost piece of the product and service is not the total cost of the product. This cost includes logistics, support, lead time, and other economic issues that could impact the true cost of the product, including import, export, all those things that take cost, and you need to compare that if you're making a wise deal for the company. Supply-based strategies. You need to partner with key suppliers and focus on supplier relationships and overall performance management. Early involvement of suppliers in new product development and strategies that support corporate strategy. Measurement and evaluations. This evolution is all the facets of the supplier relationship. As supply chains grow, the relationships we have with our suppliers become more important. And we need to understand what they need as well as what we need, although depending on what side of the table you're on, it's more important for you to understand what you need, right? But these things can include delivery, quality, cost. Other aspects of measurement include supply chain professionals. The relationship between the supplier and the corporation is managed and handled through supply chain professionals. Understanding the performance of employees with the desired outcomes with the supply base is vital to success. Supply chain leaders must link individuals and team performance to corporate goals and objectives. And then world-class quality. Doesn't do any good to have parts come in if you can't use them, right? What you want to have is high-performing companies have high-quality performance, leading to effective and efficient processes producing an optimal cost structure. Suppliers that focus on quality can support delivery and cost needs. Poor quality can drive delivery and cost issues into organizations. Rule of thumb used in many organizations is a concept of 3 times quality, delivery, and cost, meaning that quality is the most important differentiator. I could get something for $1, but if I can't use it, it doesn't do me any good to just pay $1 for it. Sourcing to this principle supports corporate strategies to mitigate risk and costs. And so at Spirit, we use this colorful bubble chart. We call it the bubble chart, although I'm not sure that's probably the appropriate name for it. But if you notice, on one of the axes is quality and delivery, and the 3 times is part of that quality. And then cost competitiveness is at the bottom. And where you're wanting to strive to work with suppliers, and I'll probably point this at myself, is in this quadrant here. And it's a really data-driven way to figure out where your suppliers lie, who you should really be working with, and who you really should be exiting. So if you notice at the bottom, the legend is red, yellow, and strategic. The size of the bubbles is the size of the spend that you currently have with those suppliers. It's a really good snapshot to see who's performing, who's not performing, and who you really should be growing with. And it takes all the emotion out of it. We know we get upset with some of the relationships that we have with suppliers, but that bad relationship might be this person here, and a good relationship might be this person here. Who should you really be doing business with? The other thing that we use quite a bit is world-class quality. And this is really an escalation cure process. And suppliers below the established accepted ratings are placed on this quality watch. And what we're doing is seeing, are they going to improve their quality? What do we got to do to get them to move out of the quality watch? When they get put in the quality watch, they get put on a no bid list. But you can see why it's so important that suppliers understand how they're being graded. Because if somebody doesn't understand that they're supposed to perform to a certain standard, they won't understand why they're not receiving quotes. If they do not make it, then this escalates all the way up to exit. And we exit suppliers that can't perform on quality. We work this all the time. So it's important to understand what they're being judged against. And that's why it's very important to have standardization across your supply chain. The other thing that we use quite a bit, and the Spirit table will recognize this, is called the quality cube or quality assessment. And this is pretty new to us. And what we're doing is we're assessing multiple suppliers within this cube. But unlike being number one, you don't want to be number one on this cube. Although all of us want to be number one, being one is bad, and being 16 is good. And what this does is help our quality organization know who to focus on. So it's driven by delivery and quality performance, and it weights all of our suppliers on this cube. If you're down here, you're doing surveys maybe online. You're not having somebody come into your facility. If you're up here, you have a lot of people from Spirit in your facility trying to figure out what's going on. The thing that's great about this is once suppliers understand this, they understand where they fall within our metrics, but it also enables us to get people where they need to be. In the past, we might have had somebody at this location just because we didn't have any way to really manage the data. And that would be a waste of our time and the suppliers when we should be focusing on the people in this group. So at Spirit, we're in a matrix organization. As corporations continue to consolidate and emanate activity in a global environment, along with complex relationships, companies must standardize common function organizations into coordinated organizations. This combination of function across many sites, platforms, and countries has compelled functional leaders to adapt a matrix-styled organization. The secret of the organization has as much to do with the vision, values, and culture as it does with the vertical reporting structures. So in a matrix organization, you have functions across the top and functions across the bottom. These functions go across these functions and support each one of them. The main challenge of organizational design is to divide tasks of a firm into manageable, specialized jobs, yet to coordinate the tasks so the firm reap the benefit of harmonious action, driving a balance of functional excellence and program P&L support. And so how we work this at Spirit is we have a global organization, and all those people in our global organization fit into this organization. They either support this line or they support this line. But that way we're all performing the same task and moving in the same direction so that we're all coordinated. Our suppliers see the same thing from each one of us. And this has been a growth for us, but it has been a good journey. And the primary reasons for matrix organizations are included on here, but there's 6 of them. Allow companies and organizations to focus on multiple business goals. So at Spirit, as Jennifer discussed, we have about 15 different platforms that we have business with. It allows us to move across those platforms efficiently. To facilitate the management of information, so as Jennifer discussed, we have 5 or 6 different sites. There's lots of information. We have billions of dollars in spend in our supply chain, so we need to be able to manage that information across all those sites. Enable companies to establish and leverage economies of scale, which is one of the most important things, is that if you're buying one thing in Wichita and it's the same thing in Kinston and the same thing in Prestwick, you should put those things together and buy them in one group. Leverage the economies of scale. Respond to different customer and program requirements. So all of our customers have different requirements, and our teams that support directly to the customers can help the rest of the functional teams understand those requirements so we can perform our task efficiently. Action-based data and performance-based decision-making. Matrix organizations require strong horizontal integration through communication and coordination between departments. So there's lots of communication. There's that communication word again. You can get miscommunication and it causes some havoc, but as long as you're all trying to work to the same goal, and the communication is very important. So common metrics. So these common metrics kind of feed into what we were talking about earlier about the standard scores you see when you arrive to classes. You know, all of us want to make an A, or most of us want to make an A. Not all of us want to make an A, right? But most of us want to make an A. Global organizations need collaboration and supply chain professionals to meet business goals. This collaboration process can be difficult to coordinate while organizations work to combine and reconfigure across several organizational boundaries to deliver corporate and customer value. Research has shown the ability to identify and link complementary capabilities via collaboration does lead to superior performance. One of the main issues that impede collaboration includes inter-functional and inter-firm conflict. Most of this conflict is due to misaligned goals and the inability to share data across organizations. Collaborative supply chains develop the metrics and processes needed to organize resources across organizations and create customer value. These metric processes are established norms, routines, and procedures. Performance metrics lead to standardization, which leads to process efficiency. So, similar to your report card, we've developed a scorecard, and my group that's here will recognize a lot of these charts. But the important thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to give feedback to our folks about how they're performing to corporate goals. We all want to be aligned to corporate goals. We want to know that we're really making a difference in the corporation. And supply chain professionals benefit from common matrix with standardization of how they are measured to their own peer group. The development of balanced scorecard provides metrics to evaluate supply chain professionals to ensure that the organization is performing to corporate expectations. Employees seeing constructive feedback from where they are wearing to how they are completing the task. Employers often overlook feedback as a motivator for employees. Feedback can be defined as data obtained by an individual about previous actions. Metrics and standards can improve performance by providing employees the information they need on how to meet that standard. And I was talking a little bit earlier about I've worked for bosses before that I wasn't sure. I thought I was doing a killer job and they thought I wasn't doing a killer job, but I didn't know that. If you have a lot of people working for you that feel that way or don't understand what the expectations are, you're not meeting your corporate goals and you're not going to meet your function goals. So it's important that they understand that. So we're going to talk about PPV capture, procurement agent cost goal versus complete, team cost goals versus complete, contract negotiations complete, past due opportunities and risk, realization, number of parts to buyer, and quality. Kind of like a scorecard or a grade card. How am I performing to what's expected? So a little bit about PPV capture, if you've never heard of this before. We talk about it all the time, so it becomes part of our vernacular. But what we're doing is we're looking at the difference between what we paid for an item before and what we're paying for it in the future. And so it's basically that simple. It could be more or less depending on your negotiation skills and what's available out in the market. This is monitored monthly for the whole organization, not just for one individual. And this example here, the plan was to get 60% reductions, and you see that it started in a big slope and the line started across here, so this team met their expectations. So what they thought they'd get for parts, the reductions they thought they would get, are shown on this chart. Procurement agent performance. So I always think about this as my scorecard for everyone that works for me. It's a really good snapshot in time about how people are performing. Now, it's important to note, though, you have to know about what's going on with these so that you're treating people equally. Some things on here may not have been avoidable. There may be things that are going on that's caused this negative variance. But knowing that and being able to see it helps you understand where people are scored to. And so how this works is, this was their 100% goal, and then this is each individual person in that group and how they are to that goal. At first, it was a little strange for our groups to have this. They weren't quite used to having this dashboard approach because they weren't used to everybody seeing what their performance was. It's kind of like when Dr. De Silva posts your grades and you run up to see where am I against everybody else. And even if you don't know everybody else's name, you're trying to see if you're better than they are. Or that's what I used to do. So I always wanted to be the best, so I always wanted to see, okay, well, there's my grade, so how did everybody else do? It's kind of the same kind of thing. How are we doing as a group and how am I doing as an individual? Same with team. So this is the overall team scorecard, and this team is 51% to their goal, and here's the gap. And then here's how all the work that these individuals are doing feed to that gap and what they have left to close. And we, again, these get updated every week, and these hang in my office actually, but it's really good snapshot for our folks to see, okay, what do we got to do? Who needs to pitch in? Where we got to meet the gaps? And that's what happens. People learn how to pitch in and help each other meet their gaps. Contract activity logs. So one of the things we talked about earlier is that a lot of negotiations go on and you can't be late on those negotiations. So another measurement that we have for our team is closing contracts. And what our goal is to try to do it about 6 months before the contracts expire, although that's not always feasible, but that is the goal, and so that's what they're being managed against. And so what we're trying to understand is by each employee, how many they have complete, what they're behind on, what do we need to help them with, is there a reason, are they locked in some sort of term fight with somebody and they need some help? What do we need to do to help get this completely closed? So this all leads to supplier realization. What we've been really working for is to reduce the number of suppliers that we're managing. At Spirit, we manage 615 active suppliers. I used to think that was a lot, and I went to a conference a few weeks ago, and somebody was speaking that they have 66,000 active suppliers, so my 650 didn't sound like too bad, but when he said 66,000, I thought, oh, that's a lot. But what the goal, the benchmark, this is a CAPS benchmark, and what they're saying here is 80% of your spend should be with about 6% of your suppliers. And if you're over that, then you have a really long tail. You're spending money and not getting all the leverage. You need to get out of those suppliers to get underneath there. And this is a benchmark we look at in July and again in December. And this will help show how we've done cutting this tail. And so again, talking about leverage, using leverage to get costs out, and also reducing the amount of people that we're talking to and all the interactions that happen. It does cut down on cost. If you can imagine how many people it takes to talk to 615 suppliers, it's a lot. Number of parts per buyer. So we've been monitoring this quite a bit, and our goal is to get to 1,400 individual parts. Now that may be hundreds of thousands of parts that are coming in, but individual part numbers. And so this is another thing that we track. And then quality performance. We want our PAs, our procurement agents, to understand how our suppliers are doing on our quality scorecards. And this year we've done pretty well. It's important, this is an important measure for us. We talked a lot about earlier 3 times quality. Understanding where your suppliers are performing quality-wise is important so that you know who you need to go help. So global matrix is what we were talking about. Let me get caught up. Alignment between global sites on metrics measurements for suppliers is critical to relationship building, not only for the global supply chain professionals in a corporation, it is also critical to building corporate relationships with suppliers. Standardization harmonizes voice to the supplier and constant predictable behavior. If one location in a supply chain organization measures on-time delivery as parts at the manufacturing station, and another location measures on-time delivery as delivery to a PO, the message to suppliers becomes mixed. Varied measures are not only confusing to suppliers, but also global supply chain organizations, and finally, the corporation. Sourcing decisions continue to be made using quality, delivery, and cost as the focus. If the metrics to measure a supplier are not aligned, it becomes impossible to measure performance is consistent. The ultimate goal of global supply chain organizations should be to have one message out to the corporation's suppliers. Metrics are the vehicle that is often used to send that message. Supplier realization. So we were talking a little bit earlier about consolidation and aggregation. So how many suppliers should you have? Who should those suppliers be? We looked at the bubble chart earlier. All of this data helps us drive to supplier realization. Consolidation and aggregation of a competitive advantage to a corporation. The latest strategic approach in the further development of supply chain has included rationalization of supply chain to weed out suppliers that don't meet companies' needs and to grow suppliers that can offer corporate gains in cost, quality, and delivery. Supplier selection is a tactic to support that strategy. Strategic supply selection has saved costs and risk in overall procurement and increased effectiveness and quality of suppliers. One of the fundamental changes in developing and working with strategic suppliers over traditional sourcing is combining requirements of multiple projects and single source in order to benefit from economies of scale and long-term relationships. I always think about that when somebody says that, like I'm going to the Sam's Club or something. You know, you go in there and you get this big tub of something. Well, it's cheaper. You may not eat it all in a year, but it's cheaper. So it's the ability to put all your stuff into one basket and get economies of scale out of that. One of the fundamental changes in developing and working with strategic suppliers over traditional sourcing is those combining of those requirements. Selection of fewer suppliers enables closer supplier proximity. I can have more relationships with 50 suppliers than I can with 600. I can spend more time with those suppliers. I can understand what do they want to do, what can we be doing together. When I'm spread thin, it makes that a lot harder. Companies may gain further bargaining power in terms of time, price, quality, and delivery when combining requirements of several projects within a given period for a set of qualified suppliers. Supplier management. True supplier management teams identify with the importance of purchasing and complexity of supplier market. And so what we're looking at is the procurement focus is strategic, and we want to monitor the goals of the company. We want to understand where does that company want to go and what do we want to do. The key criteria is have long-term availability, open capacity, market competitiveness, quality, delivery, and relationship. So we want to build relationships with those strategic suppliers. And the decision authority is centralized. And the reason why I say that is, and it doesn't have to be centralized in the U.S., every company is different, but it needs to be one common voice out to the supply base. And what we mean by centralized doesn't necessarily mean everybody works in Wichita. I'll just use us for an example. They can work off-site, but all the decisions are made within that central organization. We don't have other organizations making decisions, and that way we have that one collective voice. The approach is that strategic suppliers on single requirements and pricing. Strategic suppliers are not treated equally and individually or sourced for one single project. Requirements are aggregated together and then sourced to strategic suppliers who are selected and empowered from a strategic point of view. So we're looking for people to partner with. We want to make sure that we get the things that they're interested in and that it brings value to both of us. that. So the other thing that I don't know if many people think about supply chain, but we're very important in new business development, and some of us are living through that pain right now, as David laughs at me. But as more and more of our products are outsourced, supply chain becomes a bigger part of even business development, because we need to understand what our suppliers bring to the table with new business, as well as what we bring to the table. So corporations are beginning to see the benefits of integration of supply chain into board business models. Gaining access to new markets and customers are driving companies to evaluate the relationship between customer-oriented performance, supplier-oriented performance, and financial performance from the perspective of organizational capability. I may not be capable of doing everything, but I know I have a supplier that's capable of some of it. So we can partner together to help win this work. Organizational capability does not only rely on internal know-how, and that's a big change. Corporations, want to think, I know everything about everything, but there's no way to have that broad of a base. You have to rely on your suppliers. Organizations are relying on their suppliers' capability to support new business growth. Research has shown that successful companies foster ability by monitoring world economies to identify new supply bases and markets, using intermediaries to develop fresh suppliers and logistics infrastructure, and April was talking to me about infrastructure earlier, evaluating the needs of ultimate customers as well as immediate customers, creating flexible product designs, and determining where products stand in terms of technology and product life cycle. Development of supply chain partnerships may lead to sharing of risk throughout the supply chain. Customers are seeking agility and cost competitiveness along with dependability. Corporations need this dependability and reliability from the supply chain to be competitive in today's market. We often ask our suppliers to help handle the risk of new business. It's a burden that you can't handle alone. And we know in the aerospace industry, if you don't get on an airplane, it goes for 20 years, you miss your chance. And so we often lean on our suppliers to help make us competitive. As written in various research documents, as most of you know as business students and other types of students, the 5 forces that affect market competitiveness include threat of entrance, buyer power, supplier power, and the ability of substitutes. And these all impact the 5th factor, industry rivalry. Corporations not need only focus on rivals in the product market, but also in the supply markets. Indirect competitors who are participants in the same input market could develop into direct competitors. And we often see this. We do share some suppliers with oil and gas, with automotive, with medical. So those things also take up capacity in the marketplace. And we also become competitors indirectly with those people that need those services. There are several indicators that can become leading indicators that factor market rivalry is likely to occur. The general warning signs can include government statistics support double-digit growth, pricing is increasing in the region, wages are increasing in the region, business flights are being added in the region, suppliers mention new customers in the other industries, government is offering tax benefits, and inexpensive land is available. I've been traveling back and forth to Vietnam for a while, and the whole time I've been traveling there, they have a really old airport just like we used to have here. And I remember my last trip, I was explaining to my boss who went with me about kind of how scary it was to go to this very old airport. And of course, 3 days before they opened a brand new airport that I wasn't aware of. So as you travel, you start to see these infrastructure changes. You start to see how people are starting to develop. You can see how people are entering into this market. And it makes it easy for you to understand that you do have some rivalry in there for those goods and services. And so it's important to pay attention to those things. It kind of was shocking to me to fly into a brand new airport I wasn't aware of. So in closing, I appreciate you listening to me. I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. I was trying to show you the connectivity between aligning people and processes to establish common standards of quality delivery and cost, and the development of common metrics across global sites. and global supply chain support as a key partner to new business development. Each of these topics were addressed and examples were made. The competitiveness of a corporation can be supported through actions made by supply chain organizations. Supply chain organizations have grown to be one of the largest contributors to the cost of companies. Development of strategies and metrics to standardize across supply chain organizations can help a company develop a deterministic approach to competitiveness. And I will take questions if anybody has any questions.
Questions?
No questions?
Any questions?
No.
And that was very clear.
Robert?
No, they have to warm up a little.
Yes, sir?
How big an influence was the offset obligations that Spirit took over to your supply chain strategy?
So we do keep offset obligations in mind, of course. It's usually it's our customers' obligations, and so we try to fulfill those obligations as much as we can. We don't source to those obligations as much because it is a customer obligation, but we are aware of them. They will call us if we are going to impact their obligations. Yes, sir?
VOI, vendor-owned inventory.
Yes.
How does that affect your strategy?
Vendor-owned inventory impacts our inventory strategy. Do you mean how we source? Does it make sourcing decisions for us?
Correct.
It is part of the decision. We use a cash calculator. Sounds like a fancy term, but we're trying to figure out the value of the VOI compared to, let's say, net 350 payment terms. If I don't have to pay anybody for a year, right, it doesn't make much sense to have VOI. So it's a matter of what your payment terms are compared to what the VOI has to offer, and then we make decisions based on that.
Well, how would that affect your strategy to your supplier and their cash flow?
Well, it's just part of doing business with Spirit. A lot of our suppliers aren't so happy about it sometimes. But it is just one of those business things. We do it with our international suppliers as well as our domestic suppliers. And so it's a cost of doing business. Probably about 80% of our spend is on VOI. About 20% is not for various reasons. But it has saved us millions in inventory costs. And so it has been something that's very positive for us. Miss Bailey actually helped start that at Spirit, so I give her some kudos. Yes, sir.
Was that a strategy to narrow down the field and end up with the strongest and best position, at least financially, suppliers, and let some folks self-select out?
Yeah, so survival of the fittest is what we were asking me.
Yeah, I mean, was that part of the strategic approach?
It is a strategic approach, yes. We're really evaluating the financial position, the quality and delivery position of all of our suppliers, but also what can a supplier bring to Spirit. More of a partnership than as a supplier arrangement, although we will still have some supplier arrangements. But yes, we're looking to rationalize the amount of suppliers that we have. It's an overall strategy. Anyone else?
First of all, I would like to say thank you because you have actually, according to the newspaper, tried to take up quite a few students from WSU.
Okay.
And that is good. But according to a recent article in Wall Street Journal, it seems that American students are being kind of disfavored when you compare to international students. So, do you have a figure for the engineering students you take in, being from the United States and from overseas?
That's a tough question. I don't know. We draw on many resources, I can say that. We draw on Wichita State, OU, a lot of resources. I couldn't tell you between international students and U.S. students, what the difference would be? I don't know.
And I wouldn't know.
Sorry about
It
that.
was just the article, it brought to me a kind of reminder that even at WTCouncil, we, in a small part maybe, disfavor American students. My wife and I, our daughter went to WSU to become a mechanical engineer. And at the meeting there, and that is several years ago now, the head of engineering was a foreigner. I have no resentment against foreigners. I'm a foreigner myself. But the thing was that the emphasis was placed on the foreign students instead of the American students. So when American students needed help and they would see the foreign students would speak in their own language and the American students were kind of let down. Anyway, that's what happened there.
Okay.
Then another thing, I'm a small manufacturer.
Okay.
And I was curious, I have noticed you mentioned supply chains as it grows the relationship with your suppliers. I have found that the relationship as you grow, the relationship with suppliers grow the other way, decreases. We actually, a lot of times, speak a different language. I just had a customer recently, just a week or two ago, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know your language. Well, we're talking about what you do, manufacturing parts. And I wonder, do you do something in your organization to educate your supply chain to know a little bit about what your suppliers are talking about?
Yeah, we work with our suppliers to make sure we're all communicating and understanding requirements. I think I went over that a little bit tonight. It's important that we're all communicating and understanding each other, so I can see how that would be an issue.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I know you did, and I appreciate that. It's just curious because when you get into that situation, you're bypassed, and it just comes down to how much can you make it for, and that's it.
Yeah, so we're looking for the full value proposition. I talked about that quite a bit, quality, delivery, and cost. And so those are the suppliers that we continue to work with.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you. You have one more?
One more.
I'm done.
Only a question, no comment. One
I
question.
have also noticed one thing, and you may laugh at that.
No.
But the individual supplier or the buyer from your company, are you even aware what power you give to that single person?
We impact.
Because that single person can actually be ruining a company or making a company.
Well, so we have processes in place. Not one person can make all the decisions that go on out in the supply base, but we do empower our buyers to make decisions when they need to. It's important for individuals to be able to make decisions on the phone or at a supplier without having to call back and ask permission. But no one person can make any, not even I can make a single decision about what we're going to do with a single supplier. But yes, they are empowered to make decisions as they need to on a case-by-case basis.
Do they have the knowledge to make that decision?
We have a very knowledgeable staff, so yes, I feel like we do.
I have a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have some seniors. We have several seniors from various universities.
Okay.
Mine is very short. What's the future for global supply chains? Because you are one of the largest companies like Coke, who employ a large number of people in supply chain information.
So our global supply chain continues to grow. We have a global footprint, as you're aware. We have a facility in Sabang, Malaysia, and we also have a facility in Prestwick. We're always looking, especially in Southeast Asia, Brazil, Mexico. So our supply base is growing internationally. Our footprint has changed. Our supply base has changed along with it.
Thank you. Dr. Wendy Grossman, for your keynote address, driving standardization, improving process consistency across global sites, global supply chain basis, is very well prepared, excellent presentation.
I appreciate you having me.
And thank you very much also for sponsoring this event annually.
You're welcome.
And this is for you to remember us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Jennifer, in appreciation and recognition as a board member for the conference and sponsoring the program and taking the whole initiative to plan it very well. It was an excellent program. Thank you very much.
So April from the Kansas Department of Commerce is going to come up and give you some information, short I think, so that you can come and talk to her if you have questions afterwards.
Wendy and Jennifer to make this executive decision to give me 5 minutes to talk about this wonderful grant. We have 3 grants to offer this year, so it's a very unusual opportunity. So we would really like a company to know about this great opportunity. The first grant is called STEP. STEP grant is a very famous grant. It's issued offered by the U.S. Federal, U.S. Commerce and the U.S. SBA, and then go through the state government commerce agency to implement it. So first is STEP grant. And today I'm talking, because talking about STEP grant, we need to talk about 2 other grants. So we will have STEP grant to talk about, and then KISSAP, Kansas International Trade Assistance Program, and then the 10-county Export Accelerator. These 3 grants, they you can work as a bundle. They are not offset each other. If you are at the right place, right condition, you can use all 3 at the same time. And for the STEP grant, it's handled, managed by Kansas Department of Commerce. So Lou is the manager, and then also U.S. Kansas Department of Agriculture, Ryan is also manage that, but she's not here, so these 2 people is not here. U.S. Commerce Service, AJ is here, so she's with us. He's with us. Later you guys can ask him questions. And then KISSA is managed by me. And then 10-county Export Accelerator grant is managed by Kansas Global Service. Kansas Global Service, we have 3 people here in the audience, and we picked the most beautiful. John, Holly, and the Taylor, all with us. Okay, STEP grant. Today, in this 5 minutes, I only want you to remember keywords. I don't want to go to the detail. And I also bring a flyer for the grant. So if you guys are interested, all of us that I mentioned will stay and as long as necessary to answer questions. If you have would like to know more detail, I'll give you the flyer and answer questions. But basically, STEP grant is real money giving out to you, and it covers export training, and a partnership with SBA, even WTCouncil if you come to this event. And so there's some money can give it to you for you to come to training. And also money to go for you to go to international trade show or trade mission. And so for under the STEP grant, it only supports 2 international trade shows. That is Hanover Message and the Farnborough Air Show. One is in Germany, the other one is in England. And then you also support trade mission. The trade mission need to be those trade mission issued or sponsored by U.S. Department of Commerce. And U.S. Department of Commerce has a list on their website, and you can look for those trade shows. And then use step grant to go to those trade shows. And then it also give money for the market entry support, focus on website and the marketing product localization. That means if you have a website, company website already, but you like to do international business, you like to create another page for a different language, then that we sponsor money for you to create a new foreign language page. Or if you like to make some brochure in foreign language, we also sponsor money for doing that. And so the manager of Step Grant is Chen Lu, and this is his number, and his number will be also on this flyer. The next one is KISSAP, that will be my program, Kansas International Trade Show Assistance Program, and we usually call it KISSAP. KISSAP is a signature program from Kansas Department of Commerce versus Step Grant. Step Grant is year by year. We need to receive the grant from the federal level. And this year we received about $300,000, so we'd like to use it this year. It's from September 1st to September 1st next year. But KISSAP, it's with Kansas Department of Commerce for 20 years, so it will be always there. The difference between KISSAP and the STEP is KISSAP is only for international trade show. There's only one function, that is support company to go to international trade show. Because we believe for company to start a new foreign market or expand to a new foreign market, going to the trade show is the best way to start to do that. And it's very easy application. You can, if you have a business plan to go to an international trade show to exhibit your product. Another keyword is you need to exhibit your product in the international trade show. It's not just to walk the show. If you have any time you have this business plan, you can send the application to me, but no later than 30 days before the show, because we still need at least 30 days to do the paperwork internally. So you got the approval, you need to go to the show, exhibit your product, spend the money, and come back and ask for reimbursement. The reimbursement request, you need to send it no later than 60 days after the show. So the reason I say you control the pace is if you send it quick, we process quick, you get the money fast. And basically, if you do it within 60 days after the show, that means you get the money within 60 days after the show. And it's real money reimbursement. We reimburse 50% of the direct trade show expense. Direct trade show expense meaning, for example, registration for the trade show booth, trade show assembly, disassembly, booth furniture, booth utility, those kind of direct expense. Or, so the definition is anything not to do with human beings, usually will be trade show direct expense. So we don't cover personal travel, personal meal, personal hotel. Anything to do with human being, not qualified. So 50% of the trade show direct expense up to $3,500 per show. Each company can have a maximum of $7,000 per year. So you can use that money, sometimes go to three trade shows and use KISSAP money. And I am the manager of KISSAP, and there will be also a number in the flyer if you guys are interested. And the next, the third grant is 10 County Export escalator grant. And we will have John Schott to give you guys some introduction.
Thank you, April. I'll keep this real short. The 10 County Export Accelerator Grant is a grant that obviously covers those 10 counties. Anything that has to do with humans is considered part of that. So there is a really unique opportunity here for Kansas companies to take advantage of these 3 grants. Don't think we've ever seen anything like this in recent history on opportunities to help that tail end of the supply chain that the doctor was talking about. So if you've got any questions on this, it's basically anything that helps a company do international business. The idea being to get our local region export numbers up and to help you companies make more money, employ more people, and yeah, that's kind of it. So we're really happy to go around and help anybody figure out how to leverage all 3 of these grants to their maximum potential. That's kind of what we do. So if you've got any questions on that, holler at us at Kansas Global. I'll have some brochures here. One last comment to the doctor and to all the universities located in the room. I want to thank you for bringing us international students to this area. You have enriched our workforce. You continue to enrich our culture. Thank you for being here.
I'll make the final announcement later, but I think it's my duty to invite the Vice Chairman of WTCouncil. There are 2 Vice Chairs, Ted Ramos and Dan Meyer, who I'm not going to introduce you now because he's going to be introduced later, because he's going to be responsible for the January program, World Economic Outlook, Grant Thornton. So that's Dan Meyer right there. You want to probably be done.
Make this very brief. Thank you very much, Wendy. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for putting this program together. We really appreciate it. It's been a great program. April and John, thank you for giving us a very brief presentation. The one thing I'd add, if you have questions, we've participated in a lot of these programs, and if April and John ran through it so fast you can't remember who do I call, just pick up the phone and call one of them. They'll send you to the right place. So don't worry if, oh God, I don't remember who I called. Just pick up the phone, call them, get involved in these programs. They're great. Our December program is going to be the wine tasting at Pioneer Balloon Company. Hope you'll enjoy the setting. It's at 29th and Oliver. It's right, backs up to Chisholm Creek Park. So if you're lucky, we may have a herd of deer wander by. And be careful as you're pulling in, because there could be some turkeys, wild turkeys wandering around. It's a great setting. As Dr. De Silva said, we're going to have 18 different wines to try. How many of you would like the opportunity to try 18 different wines? How many of you think that $25 for that opportunity and enjoying a lot of hors d'oeuvres is a bargain? Two more questions. How many of you have spouses, associates, suppliers, or customers that would answer the same way to those first 2 questions? Last question. How many of you can bring at least one of those people in addition to yourself to this event next month? Well, we should see twice as many people here next month. Thank you all very much.
At the same time, there will be very nice balloon decoration, especially for the occasion, and there will be a prize given to the person who appreciates the most decorative balloon set. It's a new thing.
Oh, okay.
You were aware.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of thing that helps us to understand what is international business, what is exporting, what's the roles that are changing, because nothing is old, nothing is traditional, nothing is impermanent. Oh, permanent. This is permanent. So I rendered the last lecture abroad as a Fulbrighter. My last lecture was entitled, think of it, and if you ask me later, I'll explain it. The future is known but unborn. And that's part of global supply chain we have heard of. You will never ever believe 10 to 15, 20 years ago, the global supply chain would have developed to the stage in which it is today. And in future, Wendy has outlined some of the directions in which it's going to change. This has been an excellent program because every year we have been getting new ideas and new things. Ladies and gentlemen, in the business community, I just want to tell you, please encourage your brothers, sons, daughters, sisters. The first Principles of Global Supply Chain and Logistics course is introduced thanks to Spirit, thanks to Coke, thanks to Cargill, thanks to Textron, Beach and Cessna. The first course, and it's a hybrid course, 50% lectures, 50% practical work. So, and all those who want to upgrade their skills, you are please free to enter on a credit or non-credit basis. Now, who are those who are from Spirit? Who are here? Would you please stand and just come here? We want to take a picture, right? Then who are those people who are the board of directors? And guests, please